How's it hanging, everybody? So today I'm going to talk about my favorite RPGs from the year 2024. I played a handful of games. I'm going to rank them for you. I'm also going to talk about the games that I missed because this was truly an insanely large year for the genre. I thought 2023 was big, and it was for all games, but for RPGs as well. But I think that 2024 is somehow even bigger for RPGs. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the games that I missed, the ones that I think are important to mention, and whether or not I'm going to actually try to play through some of these. I'm also going to talk about the games from my backlog that I played through, because turns out I really like old games as well, not just the brand new this year games. So I may as well take you guys on that journey on what I was playing and chronicle my full year for you. So we're going to start out with the new 2024 releases, and first up is none other than Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Yeah, this is last on my list, unfortunately, and it's not because it's a bad game. I do not think that this is a bad game, but I do wonder about the cult classic status of this game, because honestly, I'm having a hard time getting into it. I think I'm over halfway through the game now, and I've just been underwhelmed by the gameplay loop of spending lots and lots of time in the hub world and going and venturing out to some new kind of linear path overworld thing, and then eventually getting to a dungeon and just exploring a little bit, but there's not really much to explore. And then you grind for a bit, but grinding doesn't seem very fruitful. And it's just like all the stuff I love about RPGs is just kind of either missing or watered down. And I know the game is not really about like that stuff. It's not about deep RPG systems and mechanics. It's more of a simple, casual RPG that anybody can enjoy. And I don't hate it, but I really don't love it either. And I don't know, I'm just having a hard time getting it together with this one. Again, I think it's more of a me problem than a this game problem, but it's not living up to the cult classic status that I thought it would. So I'm a little disappointed, but let's see when I get to the end. I may feel a little differently, but right now I can't rank this higher than my lowest slot, unfortunately. But anyway, next up, we're going to talk about Scald, the Black Priori, against the Black Priori. So this is a very Western RPG. By the way, I didn't mention at the top, but we typically play and cover JRPGs on this channel. So this list will mostly be, JRPGs, but there are some Western games that are going to sneak in, like this one. This is a game that I enjoyed a ton, a Lovecraftian, turn-based, grid-based strategy RPG, kind of like a Baldur's Gate demake, if you will. And it had a bit of a learning curve for me. It's not a difficult game, but it had a bit of a learning curve because I'm just not used to games like this with the dice roll mechanics and the encumbrance and all the different things that you deal with in a kind of old school dungeon crawler Western D&D style RPG. I was new to all this, and no, I have not played Baldur's Gate 3. That's the one I hope to get into in early 2025. But this one definitely, I feel like, was kind of a good dry run for Baldur's Gate 3, because this is, I think that it's a game that even the Baldur's Gate developers have commented on and said how great it is. So I was happy to play this one, and I enjoyed it a lot. Gotta love the super old school, like Commodore era style graphics on this game. Like it's just so beautiful to look at, and wow, it's a really dark game as well. Like it really goes to some dark places here, especially towards the end. But next up is my number 4 game. Wow, I can't believe this is number 4 because it's so good. If this were my number 1 game of the year, it would be a great year. But it's all the way down at number 4, which tells you a lot about how good the year is. So that would be SMT Vengeance. Yes, I realize SMT5 already came out in 2022, I guess, but you know, it was an alpha version of the game. This is the real version of SMT5. This is the one that Atlas wanted you to wait for. Actually, no, they wanted you to buy the game twice. Did I buy the game twice? No, of course not. Why would I ever do that? Yes, I did buy the game twice. I caved and bought the original game on the Switch and had every intention to play it, and it just sat on my shelf. I will say I love the original Steelbook version of this game. It's absolutely great. You should pick it up if you haven't seen it. But or if you're like a collector and just like, you know, things for your shelf and stuff like that, you could probably get it for pretty cheap. But this new Vengeance version of the game is on all platforms, not just the Switch. I've been playing it on one of the consoles, and I have been having a great time with it. This is my first Persona or SMT game. So I'm very new to the Atlas experience, but I'm so happy that this is my entry point, because what a great entry point. This is such a good game. The gameplay loop is so addicting because you're running around these massive areas. It's not quite an open world game, but it may as well be, because the areas are just so massively large, and then there are multiple areas to go to. So you're running around these areas and you're just constantly, doing little side quests and beating optional bosses and leveling up like crazy, and, having tons of fun fusing new monsters. This is like Pokemon on steroids. I mean, this is so much depth in the systems of the monster fusing and getting your party together, setting up for good auto battling, and having some really tough boss fights that really they're tough unless you've played the game like before and you know all the tricks to beat these bosses. But for me, what I've found is that I can usually beat the bosses, but I don't always have the best approach, so it just takes a long time. And if I went back to those bosses, I could probably come up with a much better strategy and take care of them more quickly. But the game is forgiving enough, or has been forgiving enough to me, to where I haven't really had to replay too many of the boss fights, but there's still lots of challenge here. And I mean, really, the strength for me, gorgeous visuals, beautiful soundtrack, and just a gameplay loop that I was not expecting how irresistible for it to be. But it really is, like, again, this could be, honestly, these top 4 games can all sort of interchangeably be my game of the year. I don't know, because this one is just so good, and it feels like my game of the year some days. I don't know. But next up, I'm going to tell you guys about my number 3 pick. That's going to be Unicorn Overlord. And this is another Sega Atlas game. These 2 Sega Atlas games are really the only ones I think I've ever played. I've somehow managed to stay off of the Sega Atlas bandwagon, but now that I'm on it, I'm super stoked. And there's so much more in the catalog that I want to get into. But Unicorn Overlord here is a very, very solid strategy RPG. Not only is it a strategy RPG, it is a real-time strategy RPG. And by the way, I have a pretty big aversion to many strategy games, many strategy RPGs. I just have not liked them when I've tried them, and I absolutely despise real-time strategy. That's why it took me years to just play a Pikmin game, because it's like, it's kind of like a Command and Conquer, StarCraft type of thing, which is not my thing at all. So like I said, I have a huge aversion to these genres. But Unicorn Overlord made me a believer. It truly did. This game blew me away. It feels like a it feels to me like Heroes of Might and Magic. I know that game is kind of under the radar for a lot of people, but back in the day, like playing on a computer in the 90s, Heroes of Might and Magic was awesome. And it was a lot like this. You go around, you clear out a giant map, you do different battles, you collect your resources, and you are basically just, you're a hero and you're going around. And this game has kind of like a hero structure as well. But the actual battling and the actual tactics of this game are so just impossibly complex, where the game is forgiving enough, at least if you're playing on like normal like I did, the game is forgiving enough to where you don't have to go super deep with your strategies, but you can go down some rabbit holes, man, with, you know, setting up like call and response type of tactics. And if this, then this, if I get attacked this way, then I will respond this way. And you can set up these deep tactical structures with every single unit on the field, and it can just feel so incredibly alive the way that you customize all of the tactics. It's incredible. And even though it is a real-time strategy game, you can pause the gameplay anytime you want, and you can select units and give them different assignments, and it's all very manageable. And you unpause the game basically to watch everything play out. And the battles are auto battle. You just have to have the right tactics going in. And it's, you know, watching the battles is something you can do. Later on in the game, I found myself just skipping through those just to kind of like, because I kind of knew what I was getting. But the battle animations are very fun to watch. This is my first Vanillaware game, the studio that made this, and the art style is beautiful and illustrative, and it's like a living comic book. And I can't wait to get into some more Vanillaware games. So yeah, tons of surprises here. And I gotta say, I'm just a little bit shook by how much I like Unicorn Overlord, another game that can sort of be interchangeably my game of the year. But next up, oh man, this was definitely my addiction of the year in terms of RPGs, and that is Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake. Holy cow, what a stunner of a game this was. This was my first time playing Dragon Quest III. I feel like I've played most of the big recommended Dragon Quest mainline games. I've done 11, which is still my favorite RPG of all time. I've done 5, which I love very much. I've done 8, and I've done 1. What else have I done? I feel like I'm missing one, but I feel like those are the main ones that are recommended, and I've managed to finish those. And now I've also finished 3, which was like the last piece of the puzzle for me in terms of like the go-to mainline Dragon Quest games. I'm glad I waited for this version. I got absolutely hooked on this game. I could not put it down. I think I beat the game in more or less like 3 days. I mean, I got started with the game, had a few shorter sessions, but once I really sort of got into the meat of the game, it's a good thing I had some vacation time to burn, because I got just absolutely ensnared by Dragon Quest III. And I'll tell you what, this is very much an 8-bit RPG. This is not like, I mean, it is a visual remake, and it has some quality of life features and improvements for sure, but at its core, it is still a Famicom game. It is old school. It is grindy. It is you're taking a few steps and you're doing auto battles. It just goes on and on and on with the auto battles. And a lot of people find that frustrating. Wait, auto battles? No, it goes on and on with the random encounter battles. This game does have auto battling like some of the other games in the list here. And for me, mainline Dragon Quest is an auto battle series. Like, you set your tactics, you have the different tactics that you want to execute in battle, and then you set things up and you just go with good strategies, go with good parties, and then you just watch things play out. Even in boss fights, you're just kind of watching things play out. I found myself in boss fights, usually I would, you're kind of keeping an eye on things. You might have to do a turn where you just heal up some or do or revive somebody, but otherwise you're kind of just watching things play out. And the real addiction, of course, in Dragon Quest III is the job class system. There's a point in the game, in the early game, where you will go to a monastery type of place, and you will be able to switch out your party members' job classes. And it's just so addicting because the questions are, when do I change my class? This character has all of these abilities, and you get to keep all of those abilities. But do you want to keep earning more abilities in that one job class, or do you want to change it and then just start working on a whole new set of abilities to be like a super character? So the decisions are endless, and you can really, really get lost in that. But really, I think even more than that was just, the beautiful visuals. Dungeons are pretty short and nice, kind of like Octopath Traveler style dungeons. And everything is just nice and succinct. And I say this about old school RPGs all the time, like 16-bit and 8-bit RPGs. They have a beautiful brevity. They don't pummel you with dialogue. They keep the dialogue to the point, but if they do it right, the stories are sometimes just as engaging, not on the level of like, a Metaphor ReFantasia or something like that, but the stories are poignant, they are emotional, and they can have some of these really incredible moments, just like the modern games that we play. So I love Dragon Quest HD 2D Remake. This is my second favorite mainline Dragon Quest. I was not expecting that, but man, I got hooked. I honestly thought I was going to be underwhelmed by this game, and I'm so glad that I went in with an open mind and just got completely swept off my feet. Absolute titan in the series, in the genre. You gotta play it. You gotta play Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake. What a stunner. What a stunner, as they say, of a game. Okay, next up, my number one. Getting right into it. Did you guess? Can you guess what it is? No, it's not Metaphor ReFantasio, because I haven't played it. It's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Okay, so this one for me, I liked Remake. I really liked Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake. I liked it a lot. Of course, I'm an old school Final Fantasy VII head. I loved the original. I like Crisis Core. I even like the really bad movie, Advent Children. I've bought like the books, the fictions and stuff. I'm way into this series. Like for me, Final Fantasy VII is like an institution. So of course I had really high hopes for Rebirth, but holy cow, this game exceeded every possible expectation. I mean, incredible open world game. And I know it's not technically open world because it's sectioned off into different giant zones, but they are giant and they are kind of connected in some, there are connective areas that you go through. But this game has everything. It has everything. Great combat system, incredible graphics. If you have a PS5 Pro, and I did get a Pro just to be able to upgrade. It does look good. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where if you have a base model PS5 and you're playing it on one of like the performance modes, it's going to look fine, but it's just more pixelated, you know? That's really the main thing. But I promise you that once you get into the gameplay, you're not going to notice that or care. The game still looks fantastic. And if you do have a Pro, I mean, this is like one of the main reasons you might want to look at getting a PS5 Pro, is because Rebirth will become like a different game, basically. I mean, it is like a, you know, super clean, 4K, crispy, 60 frames per second, smooth experience. And it uses the PSSR upscaling. But that's all beside the point. Whatever hardware you have, this game's coming to PC next month. So if you have a PC, if you have Steam Deck, if you have whatever you got, play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. After you play Final Fantasy VII Remake. And after you play the original and Crisis Core and watch the stupid Advent Children movie. I'm just kidding. No, I would definitely recommend playing Remake. I know there's different points of view on this. I know I've heard avid fans of Final Fantasy VII say you can kind of skip Remake and just go straight to Rebirth. And you could do that. But Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Final Fantasy VII Remake is a great game, but I'm kind of going on tangents here. Let me focus again. We got to talk about Rebirth. We got to talk about the gameplay loop. We got to talk about the cinematics. We got to talk about the story. We got to talk about the mini games. So the biggest criticism that this game has got is the pacing, which basically means that the game has too many mini games that break up the action and force the player to do like a little race or a little card game or whatever that they may not want to do. And my sympathy for anybody who doesn't feel like doing that kind of stuff, but there's something you should keep in mind. Most of the time when you're required to do one of these mini games, it's just a very quick one and done thing. You don't have to like do great at the mini game. You just have to do the bare essential to move forward in the story. And it's usually it's very, very low like performance criteria that you have to follow to get through this stuff. But that's the main problem. But it wasn't really a problem for me because I really only spent time playing and replaying the mini games that I wanted to play. And of course, the main one was Queen's Blood. Queen's Blood is a card game / kind of board game within Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And it is fantastic. And it is in and of itself one of the coolest games of the year. It's just a cool card game hidden in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And I really hope we get a Queen's Blood like dedicated game on its own, and I hope that it's on every platform, including mobile. That would be really cool. But that's the main sort of gameplay problem, so to speak. But at the end of the day, there are so many mini games, and so many of them are so clever and so interesting. Some of them not quite as much. But there's a ton of developmental effort that went into those mini games, and you really don't have to play them for very much at all if you don't want to. That's kind of my point here. Then there's just the story. This story is, of course, the story of Final Fantasy VII, but it goes into just like breathtaking detail. And you have a sort of fondness, or I had a sort of fondness of these characters, this cast of characters. I feel like this is the best cast of characters I've ever experienced in a video game. They're so lovable. There's so much synergy. You can feel that there's a real kind of emotional bond that is just growing and growing and growing with this group of people. And it's wonderful to watch play out, to be honest. Tons of amazing action in the cinemas in this game. Some of those play into gameplay, some not so much. But I don't know. I could really talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth until the end of time, but it's a huge, high budget, very extremely AAA game. And I don't play too many AAA games, but man, this one really hit the nail on the head for me. And this is my game of the year. I'm not saying it's the best game of the year, because I haven't played a bunch of games, as I'm about to talk about. But holy cow, did it get the job done for me. And I feel like if you like the genre, you should play this. Even if you have no interest in playing Remake, if you have no interest in playing the original, I still think this is worth a look. I really do. Okay, next up, we got a little intermission. We got to talk about all the games that I did not get to play, and I'm just going to go through these really quick in a gauntlet style format because I don't want to be here all day, and you don't want to be here all day either, but I feel like it's just because there's so much quality this year, we kind of have to acknowledge some of these. So first of all, Fantasia Neo Dimension. I've talked about Fantasia Neo Dimension a lot on this channel. I've reviewed the original Fantasian. So because I've already played Fantasian, this is not like a super high priority for me, but I did pick it up and I do plan to mess around with it when I get some time. I probably am not going to do a full playthrough, but I am very interested to see and experience some of these sort of changes and updates. I've played with it just a tiny bit, but I'll get back into it a little bit. Next up, The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak. I appreciate and applaud Nihon Falcom for making a demo of this game and letting me play through it in all of its many hours so that I can realize that it's not for me. This is supposed to be like the ultimate like entry point to the Trails series. I just wasn't feeling it. There was a little too much slice of life happening for me, and I don't really love that in games. So I'm just going to move on from Trails. We'll see about the Trails first game that's coming out, the remake, and how good that is, and if that's worth another look, I guess. Next up, Metaphor ReFantazio. This is the big one, right? This is like RPG game of the year, according to many people. And for me, it's pretty simple why I haven't played it, and that's because it's an Atlas game, and they're going to release a definitive edition or an enhanced version in a couple years. So unless Atlas comes right out and they say, hey, we're actually not going to re-release Metaphor ReFantazio, this is the retail version that we're going to keep on the shelf for many years. So for the foreseeable future, this is the only version of the game. If they come out and say that, then I will probably prioritize this game pretty high. But until then, I'm just going to wait for them to release what I think will be the inevitable enhanced edition in a couple years. That's what I did for SMT Vengeance, and no regrets. No regrets. Next up, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, another Atlas game. This one, I've never played a Like a Dragon. I've never played a Yakuza game. So this is not the one to start with. If I play one, it would probably be the predecessor to this turn-based game, which is Yakuza Like a Dragon. Probably would start with that one, and then maybe this one later. I don't know. I would like to play Yakuza Like a Dragon someday, but it just I haven't prioritized it. Next up, Persona 3 Reload. I've never played a Persona game. I think I already said that, but this one would be a good one to start with, I think, because you're starting a little earlier in the series instead of the default 5 that everybody would probably point you to. I think it's cool that they have a remake of a little bit of an older game, but never played a Persona. Gonna have to figure out how and when and if I want to play a Persona. Just a personal preference thing. I don't like the slice of life stuff, I'm starting to realize, and I feel like there's going to be too much of that in Persona for me personally. So I'm going to try Persona one of these days, but it just hasn't happened yet. Okay. Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. This game, is from the creator of Suikoden. I think he passed away recently this year, so RIP. But I've never played Suikoden, so I think that I should play Suikoden 1 and 2 in their remake collection coming out in 2025. I will play those because I've wanted to play Suikoden for many years, and if I love them, Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes will be there for me, and I can continue my fixation on Suikoden if I happen to establish one. Okay, next up is Sandland. Sandland, Akira Toriyama comic manga, now a really cool looking action RPG. Got good reviews. The year's just been too busy, so I have not played that one. I don't really see myself playing it because there's just so much coming out. Next up, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. Now, I put about 20 hours into Elden Ring. I just had some fun with it. I didn't really intend to like get deep into the game. I just kind of, after it was getting nonstop 10 out of 10s a couple years ago, I was interested enough to pick it up, but I told myself I didn't really think I was going to beat the game or want to beat the game. But I think I would have to get a lot farther in Elden Ring to actually access the Shadow of the Erdtree content, but I would still want to beat the main game first. So like, there's just not really any room for me to go into Shadow of the Erdtree right now. Next up, Visions of Mana. Okay, this one is like a top priority. It's pretty much between this and Baldur's Gate 3. Like Visions of Mana, like I'm an old school Mana fan. I love Secret of Mana, and Visions of Mana is one that looks almost like a spiritual successor, remake, reimagining of Secret of Mana. So maybe I will play that. We'll see. I think I will. Next up, Bloomtown, A Different Story. This was kind of the go-to, this was sort of life after Sea of Stars or Chained Echoes. This was that indie pixel art RPG from a Western studio. And I am very interested in this one, but I just haven't gotten around to it. And it kind of has some Persona-esque elements that I am a little concerned about, but I may get around to playing this one at some point. I might pick it up on sale, and I think it's a little bit on the shorter side, so that's a nice addition. Next up is Mario and Luigi Brothership. Okay, so I have this game because when I bought The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, I got it with a voucher, and I had an extra voucher because you buy the vouchers come in pairs. So I had an extra voucher, and I was like, oh, I don't know, Brothership looks okay. So now I have Brothership, and I hope I like it better than Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. I think I may. I mean, I have it, so it's pretty high up on the priority list. But I don't know. We'll see. Next up is Ys 10 Nordics. Had every intention of playing it next month, but now Nihon Falcom has come forward and said that it's being obsolesced. They are replacing it essentially with Ys 10 Proud Nordics, coming out in Japan in 2025, probably worldwide release in 2026. Why wouldn't I just wait for that one? I can keep my save file. I can, have the full experience of the game. People have said that Ys 10 Nordics is good, but it feels a little unfinished. So I guess we're getting an alpha version of the game, and that alpha version very quickly became obsolete. So now we just wait for the newer version. By the way, I bought Ys 10 Nordics. I have the disc. I was all ready to go, man. I'm not happy about the situation of immediately making a brand new game on its worldwide release. Old news. Don't like it at all. Okay, next up, I'm going to tell you guys about my backlog playthroughs. I'm going to run through these kind of quickly. But first up, we got Dragon Quest XI S. And this is my favorite RPG of all time. I played it originally in 2020. I loved it very dearly. Played it on the Switch. And now in 2024, I've decided to play it again. You should replay games that you really love, folks. That's what I think. I think you should replay games that you really love. And the past few years, I've been going through my backlog so hard and trying to play the new games I want to play, and it just hasn't offered a lot of time for replaying games that I love. But this year, I finally got into that habit. So I'm in Act 2, so I'm approaching the halfway point, really more like closer to a third of the way through the game. But I mean, this is my favorite RPG. It still is. I mean, I can't deny the greatness that is this game. I love it so much, and this is gonna be like my forever save because I'm playing it on my Xbox now instead of on the Switch, and it looks incredible and it plays great, and I can play it also on my PC, the same version. So this is going to be like my forever save. I'm just going to keep chipping away at this game, and I don't know when I'll beat it, but I'm definitely going to chip away at it and keep going in 2025 and eventually get through the whole thing again. But I'm just I'm taking my time with this one. When I boot this game up, it is going to be for sheer pleasure and relaxation. Okay, next up, what do we got? Stardew Valley, the 1.6 update. So Stardew Valley is an RPG. I know I got maybe some eye rolls. It's like, well, Stardew Valley is not an RPG. Well, yes, it is. It's a recreation. It's a reimagining of Harvest Moon, which is a farming RPG. So yes, this is an RPG too. Stardew Valley, I played it when it first came out in 2016. I did my first playthrough, had a ton of fun. Didn't really get super into the farming, but got really into like everything else in the game. And now I figured in 2024, with this 1.6 update, it's basically a new game. This is basically Stardew Valley like 2.0 with like so much expanded content that it's now gonna be worth it for me to just go back in and just do a whole new playthrough. And I did. And I did a Joja run, which was pretty interesting because it's not very fun. It's not, I mean, the game is fun, but the specifics of the Joja run are not that great because you basically just need lots and lots of money because all of your upgrading you do, like when you're doing the community center, the town center, you gather all of these different resources, and you have all of these like achievements in your farming and your mining and dungeon crawling and stuff. You have all of these, you gather all these like rare resources and stuff, and then you upgrade the town center. But with Joja, you just pay Joja money. You just give them money, and they're like, oh, well, we'll let you beat the game if you give us 500K. So you work your way up to 500K. You finally give it to them, and now you've restored the community center, but it's a Joja community center, and it's a movie theater with the Joja branding instead of the regular branding. So, hey, it was a challenge. It was a test of patience to get there because it was a very time intentional playthrough where every moment I was hyper focused on just like maximum time efficiency. I wanted to do as much as I could, be as productive as I could every moment of the game. I was pausing the game a lot because I was just trying to figure out, okay, what I have 4 hours left in this day before I fall asleep. What can I get done? What do I need? How quick can I get there? It was just a very, very like intense way to play a very chill game. But I had a great time. I had a blast revisiting Stardew Valley in 2024. And I'm probably going to keep going with this save. I'll pick it up every now and then and do a little more with it. Okay, next up, Dredge. Dredge is a game that I talked about just a tiny bit at the end of last year's video when I did my 2023 list. because I had this all ready to go. It was on the Steam Deck and ready to go, but I just hadn't started playing it yet. So now I have played through Dredge, and I gotta say, it's fun. Is it an RPG? I think it is. I think it's an RPG, but it's a lot of different things. It's a ship management simulator. It's a dredging game where you're going around, you're finding items in the sea, you're seafaring, you're exploring. It's an open world. Even though the target areas are islands and stuff, it's an open world. You're going all over the place. And you know, my memory is a tiny bit fuzzy because it has been a whole year, and I did play it. I marathoned this game on the Steam Deck, so my memory is not super sharp with Dredge, but I just remember having a great time. A kind of adventure, a narrative adventure, seafaring RPG with lots of puzzles, and kind of feels like a puzzle adventure game, but also an RPG. I don't know. It's got its own thing going on for sure. That's one reason to check Dredge out, is because it's so unique. But Dredge has lots of DLC and different content. I haven't checked any of that out. I don't think I'm going to, because there's just so much else I want to play. I don't really want to spend more time in Dredge, but I did enjoy my playthrough of the core experience. Next up, Ys 8. Lacrimosa of Dana. This is a game I've been wanting to play for years, and I finally, in 2024, sat down and played all the way through it, and I am very glad that I did. I loved Ys 8. I love the Ys series. There's been zero duds in all the Ys games that I've played. And this is the only modern Ys game that I've played. All the others are old school, but I was hoping that this one would match the fun factor of the old games. And I think for the most part it did. What I will say is I have a very special, I have a very positive outlook on, I have a very positive outlook on Ys Origin. That was a game, an older Ys game, uses the quote Nepishtim engine, and just electric amounts of fun. The fun factor in that game is just through the roof. I know that people, you know, have a loss of words sometimes, and they just say, oh, this game is really fun, I really love this game. But fun is just the word that comes to mind when you talk about Ys. When you talk about old school Ys games, they're fun. They're so just entertaining moment to moment. The action, the gameplay, the leveling, the grinding, the bosses, like it's just all just electric amounts of fun. And I was hoping that Ys 8 would be that as well. And it mostly was. But it did have some moments that were a little more slow, with like just, you know, constantly revisiting your hub world, which is the town. And, you know, some story sequences that went on for a little too long. And, you know, kind of telling stories about all these little tiny side questy things that don't really, you know, amount to much in the grand scheme. So there's definitely some just blah moments to get through in the story, but in terms of the gameplay is really where it's at. It's just Ys is fun, and Ys 8 is fun. And I loved the character switching. Like you're switching your characters kind of like action combat, like musical chairs. You're just constantly cycling through, because you'll approach an enemy that has a certain weakness and you're like, oh, I gotta get Adol, and you go get Adol, and then boom, you handle them, and then something else happens, and then you gotta go get, you know, the chick, whatever her name is, and you're just constantly cycling through. And very fun gameplay. A game that I feel like didn't need to be as long as it was, but I really loved Ys 8. It was a top 10 RPG of mine until I started playing some of the bangers that I played this year, and then it got knocked down a couple notches. But next up is Crisis Core. I played this right before I played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and what a cool origin story. I think that if you love Final Fantasy VII, be it the original or the remakes, you really should play Crisis Core, because this is Zack's origin story. And Zack, excuse me, is an incredibly important character in Final Fantasy VII, and it helps to know as much about his background as possible. So this lays it all out for you. It tells you the full saga of Zack and how interesting it is that he's back in these remake games. Very interesting stuff, the way it's all kind of playing out and the way it plays back into this Final Fantasy VII prequel, which is Crisis Core. This game was originally came out on the PSP, and it makes sense that it was a handheld game because the structure of the game is not like your average RPG at all. It's very short mission based, and I loved that approach to this game. I loved the short, super fun action combat. You know, honestly, if I'm being honest, I think I kind of prefer the Crisis Core combat to the remake trilogy combat. It's not as deep, but it kind of is deep. It kind of is. It's got some really good things going on, some fun surprises and some fun kind of randomness in the combat that I love in Crisis Core. And then it tells you all about goofy Zack, who is a goofball, and he will grate on your nerves a little bit in this game, but he's lovable at the same time. And it's really good to know about his affiliation with Aerith and his affiliation with Cloud and Sephiroth and all of the other, major players in the series. He is a very connective tissue kind of character. Next up, we have Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. This is a Game Boy Advance game that I actually own a physical copy of, and I just kind of happened upon this. It was actually because the Castlevania DS collection came out, and I was looking at those games and I was like, oh, cool. But now that these are out, I really kind of just want to play this one Game Boy Advance game. So I started playing it, and then I got addicted, and I ended up, beating it over the course of like a weekend. It's a short game. I think if I want to say it was like around 7 hours. So perfect weekend game. Just get started Saturday morning, and by midday on Sunday, if you power through it, you can probably beat the game. It's great Iga era Castlevania. Iga is the guy that made Symphony of the Night and some of the other games that came out later, like on Game Boy Advance and DS. And this is that Metroidvania Castlevania style. And there's tons of weapons and equipping and leveling and grinding and all kinds of great RPG mechanics in this Castlevania Metroidvania game. Okay, next and last, and kind of least, to be honest, is the original Dragon Quest. It's not the original. I played it for the Super Famicom version. My plan was to play Dragon Quest 1 and 2 for the Super Famicom before I played Dragon Quest 3. I was even going to think about playing all 3 games before the 3 remake came out, but I didn't do that, and I'm glad I didn't do that. But I did replay Dragon Quest 1. I had originally played this game on the Switch with that kind of mobile port, and I do like this version better. But there's not much to talk about with Dragon Quest 1. It's a very short game. It's kind of a detective game because the game is very open. You go into different towns, and you have to talk to everybody to know what to do, to know where to go, to know where to find an item, and how to progress things. You're just constantly talking to people and going on these little missions, and you're out in the open world, the overworld, and you're having random encounters, and you're hearing that combat music a billion times, but it's fun. It's just, you know, it launched an entire genre basically because of how fun it was, and it still holds up today to some degree. I tried also playing Dragon Quest II for the Super Famicom, and I was just burned out from playing 1, and then 2 is just, it's more obtuse than 1. It's just like, it's kind of that detective thing that I mentioned, but kind of overload. I got stuck a few times, and I eventually just decided to put the game down, that it wasn't worth trying to get through it, because I was just so eager to play Dragon Quest III, and I didn't necessarily want to burn myself out on old school Dragon Quest leading up to that. But I will be playing Dragon Quest II because, of course, we have the 1 and 2 HD 2D remake coming. Okay, guys. Wow, that was a long one. Thanks for hanging out with me, and let me know what you played this year. And let me know if I should play Metaphor ReFantasio or just wait for the better version. That's really the question I need an answer to from you guys in the audience. But anyways, thanks a lot for checking me out. Catch you later.